Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a figure who I think just defies pretty much every box you try to put him in.
Oh, completely.
We are talking about Trent Reznor. And if your first thought is just, oh, the guy from Nine Inch Nails, the industrial rock guy who screams in the dark, you are missing about 80% of the picture.
At least 80%, yeah. I'd argue that the industrial rock guy is just one distinct era in a life that has been more about, well, architecture than just songwriting.
Architecture is a great word for it. It really is. Because we're talking about a guy who went from being the absolute face of 90s angst, literally covered in mud, at Woodstock 94, to wearing a tuxedo and accepting Academy Awards for scoring Pixar movies.
Yeah.
That is not a normal career path.
It's one of those fascinating trajectories in modern cultural history, not just music history. Think about it. Most artists from that specific, gloomy, aggressive 90s era either
Burned out.
They burned out, they faded away, or they're currently playing the State Fair circuit. Reznor did something completely different. He pivoted.
And he didn't just pivot, he, ascended. So what we have in front of us today is a massive stack of sources. We've got biographies, discographies, industry reports, even court documents that cover his career from way back in 1982 all the way up to the present day.
We're going to look at the music, obviously. That's the core of it.
Yeah.
But we're also going to look at the business side of things. Because Trent Reznor is arguably as much of a tech visionary and a disruptor as he is a musician.
So our mission today is to really unpack that journey. How does a kid from small-town USA, and I mean that literally, we're talking about cornfields, go from waxing studio floors to becoming a tech executive and a film score titan?
And how did he do it? How did he manage to reinvent himself so many times without losing that intensity?
That's the word.
The intensity.
I think it really comes down to a few core themes. You see them over and over. Control, isolation, and this relentless, almost obsessive drive to escape boundaries.
Or whether those are geographical boundaries, musical ones, or
corporate ones, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's start at the beginning then, the geography part. Because I think people assume Trent Reznor just spawned fully formed in some dark warehouse in Berlin or something.
Right, like he's assembled in a factory. No, he's actually from Pennsylvania.
Deep in Pennsylvania.
Specifically Newcastle, born in 1965. But he was raised in a town called Mercer. And we really need to linger on Mercer for a second because the way he describes it is absolutely vital to understanding everything that comes later.
What did he say?
He calls it a life of cornfields.
Cornfields, just endless rows of nothing.
Exactly. He said in an interview that there was, and I'm quoting here, nothing going on. And you have to put yourself in the context of the 1970s and early 80s.
No internet.
No internet. No Spotify, no social media. If you live in a cornfield town, you are effectively cut off from the cultural vein of the world. It's not like today where you can find your tribe online.
It's total isolation. And it wasn't just geographical isolation for him, right? There was a family situation that compounded it.
A huge one. His parents divorced when he was 6 years old, which is a key detail. His younger sister, Tara, stayed with their mother, but Trent was sent to live with his maternal grandparents.
So at 6 years old, your whole world breaks apart. You're separated from your parents, from your sister. That has to be incredibly isolating.
Absolutely. He's described his childhood as very sheltered because of that environment. His grandparents were loving, by all accounts, but it was a quiet, contained world. He said his life experience basically came from watching movies, watching TV, and reading books.
So he's living vicariously.
He's living through media. He was looking at these magazines, probably Rolling Stone or Cream, and seeing people with these creative careers and interesting lives. And he said, quote, "None of that happened where I was. You're almost taught to realize it's not for you."
Wow. That is a feeling I think a lot of creative people from small towns can relate to. That sense that real life is happening somewhere else, in New York or London or LA, and you're just stuck watching it on a screen.
It creates a hunger. A real desperate need to break out. For Reznor, that isolation fueled a desire to escape. But here's the really surprising part, especially considering the aggressive industrial sound he became famous for.
Okay.
You might expect his teenage years were full of, delinquency, setting fires, that kind of thing.
Right, the typical bad boy origin story.
But he wasn't that at all, not even close. He was a classic band kid.
This is my favorite fact in the whole stack, and I just want to make sure the listener really visualizes this for a second.
Amazing.
Trent Reznor, the Prince of Darkness, the guy who wrote Head Like a Hole, played the tuba.
The tuba. And the tenor saxophone. He was in the jazz band and the marching band at Mercer Area Junior Senior High School. And he wasn't just some kid sitting in the back holding the instrument. He was good. He was dedicated.
And a theater kid, too.
A huge theater kid. He was voted best in drama by his classmates. He played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar, which, if you think about his later vocal delivery and the themes of betrayal...
That's actually perfect casting.
It's perfect casting. And he also played Professor Harold Hill in The Music Man.
Yeah, got treble right here in Mercer City. It just completely disrupts the narrative of the brooding artist. His former band director, a guy named Dr. Hendry, actually remembered him as very upbeat and friendly.
Upbeat and friendly. It just goes to show that the persona we see on stage is a construct, or at least a specific channel for certain emotions, not his entire personality. But musically, this band kid background is so crucial.
Why?
It means he understands theory. He understands composition. He can read music. He's not just some guy banging on trash cans and making noise. He knows how music works from the ground up. He has the formal training.
That makes so much sense. Industrial music, for all its chaos, is very structured. It's often machine-like on a grid. If you have a marching band background, you understand that kind of grid-like precision.
Precisely. But the spark, the moment he knew he wanted to apply all that discipline to rock and roll, that came in 1976. He went to his very first concert.
Okay, so who did he see? The Velvet Underground. Black Sabbath. Something dark and heavy.
The Eagles.
The Eagles, as in Hotel California. Peaceful, easy-feeling Eagles.
The very same.
That is the least industrial band I can possibly imagine.
It is, but you have to see it through the eyes of an 11-year-old kid from Mercer, Pennsylvania. It wasn't about the genre. It was about the scale. It was the spectacle. He said the excitement of that night just struck a chord. He looked at that massive stage, the lights, the adoration of the crowd, and he thought, someday I'd love to be up there.
So it wasn't about a specific sound at that point. It was about the platform. It was the escape vehicle.
It was the escape vehicle. So fast forward.
Yeah.
He graduates high school in '83. He heads to Allegheny College to study computer engineering.
Which, again, tracks perfectly with his later obsession with technology and synthesizers.
Totally. Yeah. But he drops out after a year. The cornfields are still too close. He's got to get to a real city.
So he moves to Cleveland.
He moves to Cleveland. And this is where the hustle really begins. We need to talk about the Cleveland scene in the mid-'80s because it wasn't exactly New York or London, but it had a pulse. It had a scene. And Reznor dives right in. He joins a string of bands.
Option 30, the Innocent Exotic Birds.
Yep. These all sound like very 80s new wave band names, don't they?
Very synth pop. You can just picture the haircuts.
And they were. Very synth pop. He was a keyboard player for hire, basically. And here's a fun little anecdote for you movie buffs out there. During this period, he actually appeared in a Michael J. Fox movie.
Wait, really? A blockbuster?
Not quite a blockbuster. The film was Light of Day from 1987. It starred Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett as rock and roll siblings. Reznor is in a fictional band in the movie called The Problems.
The Problems. I love it.
He's in the background playing keyboards. It's a real blink and you'll miss it moment. He's got this goofy 80s hair, but it just shows he was grinding. He was taking whatever gig he could get to be near the industry.
But he wasn't just playing keyboards in fictional dance, right? He had to pay the rent.
And this is the crucial part. He got a job at Right Track Studio in Cleveland. Now, usually when you hear a musician gets a job at studio, you think, okay, producer or session player, something glamorous.
Yeah.
Reznor was an assistant engineer and a janitor.
A janitor.
He cleaned the toilets and he waxed the floors.
I want to pause on this because the janitor moment is often treated as just a fun piece of trivia, but I think it's actually the most important strategic move of his entire early life.
I agree completely.
Right?
You have to understand the economics of recording music in 1988 versus today. It's a different planet.
Oh, totally. Today, you can record a Grammy-winning album on a laptop in your bedroom. The barrier to entry is basically zero.
Right. You buy Logic Pro for $200 and a decent microphone, and you're good to go.
Not in 1988.
In 1988, to make a record that sounded professional, you needed a massive mixing console that cost as much as a house. You needed 2-inch tape, which cost hundreds of dollars per reel. You needed racks and racks of outboard gear compressors, reverbs, delays. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment.
And the studio time itself cost, what, $100 an hour? $200?
Easily.
Yeah.
Which, adjusted for inflation, is like $400 or $500 an hour today. A kid from Mercer with no money cannot afford that. It's an impossible dream.
So taking the janitor job wasn't just about paying the bills.
It was about proximity. It was about access. The studio owner, a man named Bart Coaster, said something very telling in an interview. He said, When that guy waxed the floor, it looked great.
Of course he did.
Even when he was cleaning toilets, Reznor was a perfectionist. He had this intense focus. And because of that work ethic, Coaster cut him a deal.
The golden ticket.
He told Reznor he could use the studio during downtime, which basically meant the middle of the night when no paying clients were there, to record his own demos for free. He just had to pay for the minor wear and tear on the tape heads.
So while the entire city of Cleveland is sleeping, Trent Reznor is in this high-end professional recording studio all alone, teaching himself how to use all this gear that he could never, ever afford to rent.
That is the genesis of Nine Inch Nails. It's the isolation of Mercer, but now it's been transferred to a dark studio in Cleveland at 3 a.m. It's just him and the machines.
And this leads us directly to the architecture of the band, as you put it. Because Nine Inch Nails sounds like a group. It sounds like 4 or 5 guys in a garage. But it wasn't.
No, not at all. Reznor ran into a problem very early on. He couldn't find a band in Cleveland that could play the songs the way he heard them in his head. He said that he felt other musicians diluted the vision. They couldn't articulate what he wanted.
So he pulled a Prince.
He pulled a Prince. He decided to play everything himself. Keyboards, guitars, bass, programming, basically everything except the drums. He realized that if he wanted total control over the sound, he had to become the entire band.
Which is a massive undertaking. I mean, Prince was a once-in-a-generation virtuoso player. He could pick up any instrument and just shred. Was Reznor on that same level as a pure instrumentalist?
That's a really good distinction to make. Prince was pure feel. He was a natural, a virtuoso performer. Reznor was more of a tech wizard, a sonic architect. He wasn't necessarily the best guitarist in the world, but he knew how to process that guitar sound to make it do exactly what he wanted. He was building a soundscape, not just jamming.
So Pretty Hate Machine drops in 1989. This is the fruit of all those late-night janitorial sessions. And it's a hit, right?
It was a moderate success commercially at first, but in the underground, it's massive. It was a slow burn that just kept selling. It eventually went triple platinum.
Why did it connect so strongly?
It connected because it bridged 2 worlds that didn't usually mix. It had the aggressive, clanking percussion of industrial music, bands like Skinny Puppy or Ministry, but it had these undeniable pop hooks, these incredibly catchy choruses.
Head Like a Hole is a catchy song. You can absolutely hum it.
Exactly. It's industrial music you can dance to. And the lyrics were pure, uncut teenage diary angst. I'd rather die than give you control. That line resonated with alienated kids everywhere. But with success came the one thing Trent Reznor hates most in the world.
Interference.
Interference. The label got involved. TVT Records. They saw Pretty Hate Machine selling, and they said, great, give us another one just like that, but make it a plop hit. Make it for the radio. They essentially wanted him to be a synth pop star.
And knowing what we know about Reznor now, the guy who wouldn't compromise on how to wax a floor, I assume he just loved being told to make a pop album.
He hated it. He felt completely stifled. He felt they were treating him like a cash cow rather than an artist. So in a move that really foreshadows all his future legal battles, he went to war. To avoid their interference, he actually started recording his next project under pseudonyms.
He went underground to make his own music while signed to a label.
He did. He recorded what would become the Broken EP in secret in various studios, paying for it himself. And the sound of Broken. I mean, if Pretty Hate Machine was a bridge between pop and industrial, Broken was him dousing that bridge in gasoline and lighting a match.
It's that different.
It is significantly heavier, angrier, faster, and more abrasive. It's almost a pure metal record in some places. It's basically a sonic middle finger to his record label.
And it worked.
It worked. The behind-the-scenes machinations were complex, involving Interscope Records and Jimmy Iovine, but the end result was that he managed to get released from his contract with TVT and signed to Interscope, bringing the finished Broken EP with him. He won a Grammy for the song Wish off that EP, a metal performance Grammy for a guy who started out playing keyboards.
So he wins his freedom, he proves his point. But then we get to the big one, the magnum opus, 1994, The Downward Spiral.
This is the landmark. This is the album that defines industrial rock for the entire 90s generation. But the creation of it's heavy. And we absolutely need to talk about the location, because where you record an album changes how that record sounds.
He didn't stay in a studio in Cleveland for this one.
No, he moved to Los Angeles. And for the recording, he ended up renting a house at a 1050 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon.
That address sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who knows American history.
It should. It's the site of the Tate LaBianca murders committed by the Manson family in 1969.
Whoa. Okay, let's stop right there. He deliberately moves into the Manson murder house to record an album called The Downward Spiral. That feels incredibly intentional. That feels like edgelord behavior, to use a modern term.
It's a huge point of controversy, and he's been asked about it for decades. He built a studio inside the living room, right where the murders happened, and he named the studio Le Pig, which was named after the word pig that Susan Etkin scrawled in Sharon Tate's blood on the front door.
I mean, that is grim. It's beyond grim.
It is grim. Now, Reznor's defense has always been, at least initially, that he didn't pick the house for what he called serial killer bullshit. He told Entertainment Weekly at the time that he just looked at a lot of places, he liked the layout of this one, the vibe felt right, and it just happened to be that house.
Do we buy that? I mean, really, you accidentally rent the single most infamous murder house in Hollywood history.
It's very hard to buy Philly. He later admitted to having a fascination with what he called American folklore. He saw the house as part of a dark American history, an artifact. But there's a story he tells that completely changed his perspective on it.
What happened?
During the recording sessions, he had a chance encounter with Sharon Tate's sister, Patty Tate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she confronted him. She basically asked him flat out, "Are you exploiting my sister's death for being cool, for selling records?" And Reznor said that question just really shook him to his core.
It grounded the horror in reality.
It did. He realized that for him, it was this abstract American folklore, but for her, it was her sister being butchered in that room. He said he went home that night and just cried. He realized he'd crossed a line.
He moved out after that, didn't he? And the house was torn down.
He did. He said the experience made him reevaluate a lot of things. But regardless of the intent, the atmosphere of that house undoubtedly seeped into the record. The Downward Spiral is a claustrophobic, intense, terrifying album. It sounds like a mental breakdown recorded on tape.
And yet, that's the album that launched him into the stratosphere. Closer became this huge, unlikely hit. Hurt became an instant standard that Johnny Cash would later cover. He was suddenly one of the biggest rock stars in the world.
He was. But then, near silence. Or at least a very, very long gap in terms of new Nine Inch Nails studio albums.
This brings us to what the sources call the dark years, post-1994. He's touring extensively, including that legendary Woodstock 94 performance where the whole band came out covered in mud. But underneath all the success, he's starting to crumble.
He's really struggling. That perfectionism we talked about is now paralyzing him. He has massive writer's block because, I mean, how do you follow up an album as iconic as The Downward Spiral? And he's dealing with severe addiction issues.
We'll get into the mechanics of the addiction in just a moment, but musically, this all leads to The Fragile in 1999. 5 years later. That's a lifetime in the music industry back then.
It is. And The Fragile is a double album. It's this massive, sprawling, ambitious undertaking. Critically, looking back, many people now consider it his masterpiece. It's dense, it's atmospheric, it's often beautiful. But at the time,
It flopped.
it didn't flop, but it definitely underperformed commercially. It lost money for the label, it was incredibly expensive to make, and it didn't have a clear, punchy radio single like Closer. It was too complex, too long for casual radio listening.
I read in one of the reports that he actually funded the entire North American tour for The Fragile out of his own pocket.
He did. The label wouldn't support it, so he financed it himself. That's how much he believed in the vision. He was willing to bet his own fortune on it. But you can see the strain building. He was fighting the label, who just wanted another hit. He was fighting his own demons, and he was fighting to maintain artistic control in an industry that was rapidly starting to change.
Let's unpack those demons, because segment 3 of our outline really focuses on his addiction and his subsequent sobriety. It seems like the mid to late 90s were really the bottom for him personally.
They were. After the massive success of The Downward Spiral, he fell into a deep depression. And this is where that childhood story comes right back into focus. His maternal grandmother, the woman who raised him in the cornfields, who was his surrogate mother, she passed away.
That must have been devastating. She was his anchor, the one stable figure.
Exactly. Losing her, combined with the immense pressure of being crowned the voice of a generation and the emptiness that often follows huge success, it sent him spiraling. He was abusing alcohol and cocaine heavily.
He didn't hide from it in later interviews.
No, he was very blunt about it. He said, quote, "I had become a terrible addict. I needed to get my shit together." He was essentially living the destructive narrative of The Downward Spiral in his real life. The art had become reality.
But there was a surprising influence that helped turn him around. And this is another one of those connections that feels almost too perfect, like it's from a movie script.
David Bowie.
David Bowie.
Yes, Nine Inch Nails toured as the opening act for Bowie in 1995 and 1996. It was the Outside Tour. Now, I want you to just imagine this scenario. Reznor is at the absolute peak of his fame. He's the dark prince of industrial rock, but behind the scenes, he's a complete mess.
Right.
And then there's Bowie. He's older. He's past his commercial peak from the 70s and 80s, but he's vibrant. He's endlessly creative. And most importantly, he's sober.
Bowie had his own infamous cocaine years in the 70s, the Thin White Duke period.
Right. Bowie was the Thin White Duke, famously living on a diet of red peppers, milk, and cocaine. He had been exactly where Reznor was. And Reznor looked at Bowie, who was happy, healthy, and still making challenging art, and saw that there was a way out.
A roadmap.
A roadmap. He saw that you didn't have to die young to be a legend. You could age, you could evolve, you could have a life.
It wasn't an immediate fix, though. The turnaround didn't happen right after that tour.
No, it took several more years. Addiction is a beast. But Bowie planted the seed. He was a mentor, almost a ghost of future past for Reznor. Reznor finally hit rock bottom after the Fragile tour and went to rehab, completing it in 2001.
And the music changed after that. You can hear the shift.
You can absolutely hear it. The first album post-rehab was With Teeth in 2005. And it sounds clearer. It's more focused. The drums are punchier, more direct. The fog has lifted sonically. And it went straight to #1 on the Billboard 200 chart.
Which must have proven something crucial to him.
Oh, absolutely. It proved that he didn't need the drugs to create. That is the great fear of every addicted artist. If I get sober, will I lose my edge? Will the muse leave? With Teeth, proved that the edge was in him, not in the bottle or the powder.
And his personal life stabilized in a way that I think really shocks people who only know him from the lyrics of Closer.
Right. The angry, isolated young man found a new path. He married Mary Keane Mandig in 2009, and they now have 5 children.
5 kids. From the guy who wrote Hurt. That's a lot of soccer practices. It's a profound change.
It's a profound evolution. In 2023, he actually expressed reluctance to tour as 9 Inch Nails, specifically because he didn't want to miss his children's lives. He said he wanted to prioritize his family over the machine of touring. It's a complete 180 from the isolation of his youth. He built the stable family unit he didn't have as a child.
Speaking of the machine, let's switch gears to the industry side of things, because Trent Reznor isn't just an artist. He is a guy who has gone to literal war with the business of music and won.
Oh, absolutely. And he has the scars to prove it. The biggest and most revealing battle, and this is a real cautionary tale for any creative person listening right now, was the lawsuit against his former manager, John Malm Jr., in 2004.
This story is just wild. So Malm was his manager from the very beginning, right? From the Cleveland days.
From the early days. They were partners. Malm was more than a manager. He was the co-owner of their company. But when Reznor finally got sober in 2001 and started to look at his finances, really look at them with a clear head for the first time in years, he realized something was desperately wrong.
What did he find?
He found that he had sold millions and millions of records. He had sold out arenas all over the world. But he only had about $400,000 in liquid cash to his name.
That doesn't add up at all. Where did all the money go?
It went to the manager. The contract he had signed as a young, naive artist stipulated that Malm got 20% of Reznor's gross earnings.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. I want to do a little business 101 here because the difference between gross and net sounds boring, but it's actually life or death in business.
Let's use a simple lemonade stand analogy. Let's say you run a lemonade stand. It costs you $9 to buy the lemons, the sugar, and the cups. You sell the entire pitcher of lemonade for $10.
Okay, so I made $1 of profit. That's my net, my take-home pay.
Right. Now, if your manager takes a standard 20% of the net, he takes 20 cents from your $1 profit, you keep 80 cents. Seems fair enough.
That sounds totally standard.
But Malm's contract took 20% of the gross. The gross is the total revenue, that $10 sales figure. So you sell the pitcher for $10. Malm immediately takes his 20%, which is $2, right off the top.
But wait a minute. It cost me $9 to make the lemonade. If he takes $2, I only have $8 left.
Exactly. You just lost $1. You were literally paying to work. Now, apply that same math to a massive global tour. Tours are incredibly expensive. You have to pay for the trucks, the lights, the sound system, the road crew, the buses, the hotels. A tour might gross $10 million in ticket sales, but cost $9 million to run.
So under this contract, Malm takes his 20% of the gross. That's $2 million.
And Reznor is left with the remaining $8 million to pay $9 million in bills. Reznor ends up $1 million in debt from a successful tour, while his manager walks away with $2 million in cash.
That is That is predatory. It's insane that it's even legal.
The jury thought it was more than just bad business. Reznor sued Malm for fraud and breach of fiduciary duties. The jury awarded Reznor nearly $3 million, which is about $5 million adjusted for inflation today. And just as crucially, the verdict restored his control over his trademarks, including the iconic NI logo.
So he wins his freedom, he wins his name back, he gets his finances in order, but he wasn't done fighting the machine. He then turned his sights on the record labels themselves.
This was the Year Zero era, around 2007. The music industry was in a full-blown panic because of Napster and digital piracy. Their solution, which was completely backwards, was to jack up the prices on physical CDs.
Right.
Reznor was on tour in Australia and saw that his new album was being sold for an exorbitant price. I think it was something like $30 Australian.
And he called them out on it, publicly.
Oh, he called it absurd in all caps. He went on a tirade accusing Universal Music Group of ripping off his true fans just to prop up their dying, outdated business model.
And he didn't just complain on a blog or something. He said something on stage that I think every single label executive at the time must have had nightmares about.
He told the crowd to steal his music.
Literally.
Literally. He stood on stage and said, "Steal it, steal and steal and steal some more and give it to all your friends and keep on stealing." He actively encouraged piracy of his own work.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. It's pretty easy for Trent Reznor, a multimillionaire rock star, to stand up and say, "Steal my music." Can a new artist, someone just starting out, really afford to say that?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And frankly, no, a new artist can't. Reznor was in a very privileged position to be able to burn that bridge. He had already made his name, but his core point was that the value of music wasn't in the plastic disc anymore. It was in the relationship with the fan.
So the label, by gouging the fan on the price, was actually hurting the long-term relationship.
They were damaging the brand.
Yeah.
Reznor was prioritizing the long-term health of his fan base over a short-term CD sale, and he put his money where his mouth was. In 2008, he released the next album, The Slip.
And how did he release it?
He didn't even do a pay-what-you-want model like Radiohead did with In Rainbows. He just put the entire album in multiple high-quality digital formats on his website for free. No strings attached. His message was simply, "This one's on me."
And what was the response?
It was downloaded 1.4 million times in the first 6 weeks. It showed that he understood the new digital landscape better than the labels did. He understood that in the internet age, access and goodwill were more valuable than scarcity. If 1.4 million people have your album, that's 1.4 million potential ticket buyers for your next tour.
This tech-savvy mindset, this understanding of the digital world, actually led him into the corporate world, oddly enough. This rebellious pirate ended up wearing a badge at Apple.
It's one of the great ironies of his career. He joined Beats Electronics as the chief creative officer. His big project was codenamed Daisy, and his goal was to solve the problem of music discovery in the streaming age.
What was the problem he saw?
He hated algorithms. He hated that Spotify would just feed you more of what you already liked. He wanted to create a streaming service that felt like having your own guy at the record store. A human curator who knows what you like, but can also push you to discover something new.
That project eventually became Beats Music, which was then bought by Apple for $3 billion and became the foundation of Apple Music. So Trent Reznor was an Apple executive.
He was, for a while, but it didn't last. He eventually left, saying that the corporate environment felt at odds with the artist in me. He realized that being a corporate executive means sitting in meetings about marketing budgets and user acquisition, not making art. He's a guy who needs to be in the studio creating.
Well, speaking of creating, let's look at his collaborations. Because for a guy who famously started as a one-man band because he couldn't play well with others, he sure collaborates a lot now.
It's true. It's another one of his great evolutions. And the range of his collaborations is just staggering. Early on, he produced Marilyn Manson's breakout albums, like Antichrist Superstar. He really shaped that sound. But that relationship soured pretty badly due to competition and personal issues.
But then you have something completely out of left field, like Old Town Road.
Alas. Yes, the biggest song in the history of the Billboard charts for a while. So the story is that Lil Nas X sampled a 9 Inch Nails instrumental track called 34 Ghosts the Fifth from the Ghosts IV album.
He didn't ask first, did he?
No, he just bought the beat online from a Dutch producer for like $30, not even realizing it was an NIN sample. The song blew up, and suddenly Reznor's lawyers are on the phone.
Reznor could have sued him into oblivion. He could have blocked the song from ever being released properly.
He could have, and a lot of artists from his generation absolutely would have. But Reznor didn't. He cleared the sample. He allowed it to happen. He was supportive.
He got a songwriting credit and a Country Music Association award out of it, didn't he?
He did. Trent Reznor is a CMA award winner. But what's really interesting is how he handled the fame of it. He declined to be in the music video. He didn't want to show up on stage with Lil Nas X. He said, "This is his time, not mine." It shows a real maturity. He's happy to facilitate and get paid for it, but he doesn't need to hog the spotlight anymore.
He also produced Halsey's album, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power, in 2021.
Which was a brilliant move. He took a massive pop star Halsey and gave her this gritty, raw, industrial edge. The album sounds like a lost Nine Inch Nails record, but with her vocals. It garnered huge critical acclaim and showed that he can translate his specific sound to a new generation without it sounding like old guy trying to be cool.
But the most important creative partnership of his modern era is definitely with Atticus Ross.
Without a doubt. Atticus Ross had been working with him for years as a programmer and producer. But in 2016, Reznor made him the only other official member of Nine Inch Nails. They are a true duo now. And together, they launched what is essentially Trent Reznor's second act, film scoring.
And this isn't just some side gig for them. They are dominating Hollywood.
It all started with David Fincher. Fincher approached Reznor to score his film, The Social Network, in 2010. Reznor was actually reluctant at first. He said reading the script ruined his planned year off because he knew it was so good that he had to do it.
And thank God he did. That score, I mean, let's just try to describe it. It doesn't sound like a typical movie score at all. There's no sweeping orchestra. There are no violins swelling when two characters have a moment.
No. It's electronic, it's twitchy, it's anxious. It uses these buzzing, arpeggiated modular synthesizers that sound like electricity in code. It perfectly captured the feeling of the digital world and the social anxiety of the characters. It completely redefined what a drama score could sound like.
And it won them the Academy Award for Best Original Score on their first try.
First try, wins an Oscar. Not a bad start.
They became Fincher's go-to composers after that. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which won them a Grammy. And then Gone Girl.
Oh, I love the story about the Gone Girl score. It gives you such a perfect insight into their creative process.
Tell it.
So Gone Girl is a movie about a marriage that looks absolutely perfect on the outside, but is just rotten hatred and deception on the inside. Fincher told Reznor and Ross that he wanted music that sounded like an insincere facade.
An insincere facade? What does that even mean musically?
Well, Fincher had been at a chiropractor's office, and he heard this soothing, but ultimately terrible, cheesy, new age massage music. And he told them, make the musical equivalent of that false comfort.
That is so creepy and so perfect.
So Reznor and Ross created this beautiful, soothing, ambient music, but then they let it curdle. They added just a little bit of dissonance under the surface, a little bit of noise, a slightly off-key note, so you feel deeply uneasy listening to it. You know something is wrong, even when the music is telling you to relax.
It's psychological warfare through sound.
It is. But they haven't just stuck to dark Fincher thrillers. They scored soul for Pixar.
Which is wild. Nine Inch Nails doing a Disney Pixar movie about the afterlife.
And they won another Oscar for it, which they shared with Jean-Baptiste. They did the Watchmen series for HBO and won an Emmy. They're just racking up the hardware.
But they don't love everything they do, right? What was the story with the Sandra Bullock movie Bird Box?
Reznor was very blunt about that one. He called the experience an effing waste of time. He felt the production team phoned it in and that the final sound mix of the movie buried their music so low you couldn't even hear it. He has no patience for mediocrity. If he's going to commit to a project, he wants it to be excellent.
And he's got a really busy slate coming up, too. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, the new Luca Guadagnino film Challengers, and Tron, Ares, in 2025. He is working harder now as a composer than he ever did as a touring rock star.
But he's working on his own terms. That's the key difference. He's not living on a tour bus for 18 months. He's working in his own studio with his creative partner, making art that he believes in, and then he goes home to his family.
So we've talked about the history, the business, the movies. Let's dig into the sound itself. Segment 6. What makes a Trent Reznor song sound like a Trent Reznor song?
Well, People magazine once famously described it as self-loathing sexual obsession mixed with synthesized beats, which is crude, but it's not inaccurate for the early stuff.
It's that baritone voice, right? It's just unmistakable, whether he's whispering or screaming.
It's the baritone range, for sure, but I think the real secret sauce is the contrast. That is the core of the Nine Inch Nails sound. He mixes very aggressive, distorted, ugly noise sounds that should be painful to listen to These very beautiful, fragile, elegant piano melodies. It's beauty and decay happening at the exact same time.
So who are his influences? Because we know about the tuba and the Eagles, but where did the synths and the darkness come from?
Gary Newman is a huge one. Reznor said hearing the song Cars was a revelation. He knew instantly that he wanted to work with synthesizers. And Depeche Mode, of course. Specifically their album Black Celebration. Reznor called seeing them live on that tour a spiritual experience.
I can totally hear that. That dark, moody electronic pop is definitely in the DNA of Pretty Hate Machine.
But then you have the rock side. He cites the band Rush, specifically their Signals album, as teaching him that keyboards could belong in hard rock, that they weren't just for pop music. And then you get into the really experimental stuff. Coil, Throbbing Gristle, and especially the Canadian band Skinny Puppy.
Oh, he's talked about Skinny Puppy a lot.
He has. He's actually admitted that his first hit, Down In It, was basically a total ripoff of Skinny Puppy's song Dig It. He was very open about his influences.
At least he's honest about it.
And his own legacy of influence is massive. David Bowie compared Nine Inch Nails to the Velvet Underground in terms of their impact. Axl Rose was heavily listening to Reznor while making the long-delayed Guns N' Roses album Chinese Democracy. Artists like Angun and Steven Wilson both cite the album The Fragile as a life-changing record for them. He shaped the sound of a whole generation.
So, to bring this all together, we started with a lonely kid in the cornfields of Pennsylvania who just wanted to escape. He played tuba, he loved the Eagles.
He waxed floors to get free studio time.
He fought addiction, he fought his manager in court, he fought the record labels on stage.
And he won. That's the incredible thing. When you look back at all these battles, he won. He won all of them.
He really did. He's an Oscar winner, an Emmy winner, a father of 5, and he's still making edgy, relevant art into his late 50s.
It raises a really provocative thought for me, looking back at this whole journey. We usually look at an artist's masterpiece as a specific album. For Reznor, it would be The Downward Spiral, The Fragile. But looking at this whole stack of sources, I wonder if Trent Reznor's greatest masterpiece isn't an album at all.
What is it then?
I think it's his career itself. It's the way he engineered a life. Think about it. He took the self-loathing and the profound isolation of his youth, and he transmuted it into art. He then survived the total collapse of the music industry in the 2000s and came out ahead of the labels. And then he transitioned from being a rock star, a job with a very short, self-destructive shelf life, to being a composer, a respected job you can do until you're 90 years old.
That is a fascinating way to look at it. He didn't just survive the machine, he rebuilt the machine to work for him.
Exactly. He proved that you can grow up without selling out. You can evolve from that angry kid without losing your artistic edge. His masterpiece is the life he built.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Whether you're listening to The Downward Spiral or the Social Network score later today, maybe listen a little closer. There's a lot of history and a lot of struggle and strategy in those notes. Thanks for listening.